Today on the show, I have Grammy award-winning front of house engineer Sean Quackenbush. Sean is the front of house or mixing engineer for Brandi Carlisle. I was on a tour with him out with Stephen Kellogg a bunch of years back, and he's such a great guy. So I'm really excited to talk to Sean and very happy to have him on. Let's not waste any time. And here's my conversation with the great Sean Quackenbush. What's going on, dude?
What's up? How are you?
Oh, just chilling. I actually just finished doing another podcast. It was at 10 a.m. and it it went like 3 hours.
Wow. Who were you on with?
So there's this dude, this artist, his name's Gavin Castleton, and he's from Rhode Island. He's one of my favorite musicians, and he lived he lived in Portland for years. And then he moved,
Really?
Yeah, he moved back out to Rhode Island maybe like mid-pandemic. He had a kid and stuff. So now he's over here. You should check him out. He's really interesting musically. Okay. He's like super, eclectic dude and has recorded like, I don't even know, like 10 or 12 albums or something. And he just came out with something new that's really sick.
Oh, that's awesome.
Definitely worth a deep dive for sure. What's going on with you, man? Look at that room. Look at that board.
Yeah. I saw that you do this on video, so I said I might as well do it up to make it look kind of interesting, like I'm worthy of what I do.
Dude, it's rad. I'm actually interested in what you got up above the bookcase over there. Is that like a Lego?
That is a Lego roller coaster.
Dude, that's rad. Did you build that?
Yeah, actually, and the funniest part is, I think my mother got it for me for Christmas for like my 43rd or 44th birthday.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, my whole thing is if I didn't do audio, if I didn't do concerts, the only other thing I ever wanted to do was design amusement park rides.
Right.
That was my thing, and I was like, well, it's way more math and engineering in designing theme park rides, and I found that not to be true with what I do every day with the math I have to use. The fact is I have to know sample rate conversions and just literally like, what's the speed of sound in a certain temperature of air at any point in a room.
Well, at least you don't have to worry about like someone flying off of a roller coaster. That's better.
No. But I will say this: when we got Disney Plus, there's that Imagineering series. It's like 6 or 8 parts.
Yeah,
and that's like wow. If you could have done that, And it's funny. Our production manager is the same way. We were just like complete, and like we nerd out. Like oh man, that guy Joe Rohde. He's the guy who he did Animal Kingdom, or this is the guy who designed the Haunted Mansion, and that kind of thing. It's just, that's, they invented technology. There was nothing there, and they had to come up with it.
Right. Were you a roller coaster tycoon fan back in the day?
Yes. Oh yeah. I have it on my phone still, and when I'm on airplanes every once in a while, I'll bust it out and I'll just start playing with it.
It's great. I always forgot to put a restroom near the roller coaster, so everybody kept like throwing up.
Yeah, and then you had to keep hiring maintenance guys to clean it all up.
I went totally broke doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, man. Well, what have you been up? You're off the road right now. So what's your schedule like these days?
We're off.
Okay.
I mean, I still work for Brandi, and we work, a couple weeks a month. Whether we have some shows or I just deal with stuff. I mean, I've got all of her guitars over in the corner, so I kind of look after things that kind of don't get looked after the years we're touring. I still do a little bit at the house, the studio. I help maintain that, the computer stuff, the networking, the home security kind of stuff. Like I've always kind of helped out on that a lot. It's, I'm, the house mouse per se,
Right.
But, stuff needs to come in and go out, and since stuff's home, since we're home, we can, guitars can come out of the storage unit and come back to the Pacific Northwest and, go to the luthier and get the once over or, just different aspects. I was able to get all the rigs that I've built for them over the years, to really just pull them apart, blow out the dust, and, maintenance and all the stuff you really wish you had time to do while you're touring. And,
Mm.
a lot of that, a lot of looking after the archive, all the live shows, what we've had. I mean, at this point, there's probably thousands of terabytes of just data, and making sure. I mean, I've pretty much recorded everything I've ever done for this band.
Do you multi-track
Excuse me,
all that stuff?
every single night,
Oh my
and do
God.
duplicates and backups and everything. And it's gone from, for the audio nerds out there, for 48K to 96K, you know. So it's the data is like, an average show is about 300 gigs,
Oh,
but then you do two backups of it, and then I mean it's 128 tracks at 96K 24-bit. So
that must take like a tremendous amount of time. I know, like, we're not going to talk about tech the whole time. I know you're probably all talked
no,
out about tech,
no, so
but like that must take a tremendous amount of time. Like, what's the workflow for something like that? Is it kind of automatic? Do you have it set so you kind of feel it's like, all right, got to upload the show, or that's going to do its own thing, and then you can focus on something
well,
else? Or
it's interesting how I do it. So how I do it is 2.5-inch solid state drives, which is more or less a laptop hard drive. You can buy like caddies and docks that they lock into. So
all right,
before, when you're on more of like a solid state drive recording, you would have to bring out, your portable drive, and then start it loading, offloading it to the machine, or actually physically open up the computer and pull the drive out. But with these solid state drives and the technologies come so much, I record them to a solid state drive,
oh
and
wow,
I carry about a dozen of them with me on the road. So like most days off, I'll do an immediate backup just so there's a and I back up to a mechanical drive, so an actual spinning disc, because the difference is if a solid state drive goes sideways, the data's gone. If a mechanical spinning disc drive goes bad, you got a pretty good chance you can send it in and recover the hardware. But with the level of stuff I'm doing now, so if we go out and do a few shows and we're staying on the road, the day off, I'll go in the hotel room. I'll just get up in the morning, or just start the drives at night. And with solid state, and the fact is with like USB 3 and Thunderbolt 4 and all that, the stuff, the data moves pretty quick.
it's pretty quick now, yeah.
Pretty quick. But when I come home, um, usually my first day, once I get home, not like a travel day or anything, the travel day, I usually need a day just to like, I don't know, to decompress kind of thing. But I'll come
Mhm.
down here, and I mean, mostly that's what I use this room for. My studio is just like, all the stuff with the band. So immediately I'll back up to two separate hard drives, two separate mechanical hard drives, and depending on the show, sometimes a third or fourth, and depending like sometimes we'll get done with a show and I'll get note, someone immediately go like, hey, we got to get this to Brandon down in Nashville to start working on it while we're on the road. Or a lot of it just goes in, and every once in a while the band will hit me up. We have kind of like a Bible, a live Bible, a song that kind of floats around on a server, that if we have a sub musician, or somebody, we need to reference something,
Mhm.
and we update it all the time depending who's playing for the band and what they've done with the arrangement and stuff like that. So we did the Mothership, and we did that Mother's Day weekend. We had a couple of sub musicians, but also at the same time, some of the songs in that Bible folder were months, some of them are years old. They'll say, hey, we want to pull out this song we haven't done in 4 or 5 years. Well, that was a different drummer, and we were playing it at a
Right.
different tempo, a different key, whatever. So, constantly, like, I'll get hit up by the band and be like, hey, can you put together a folder and upload that or change this song out? Or like we did a version of like, hey, we did Live and Let Die, but later on in the summer it got really, it was such just a tighter performance. Let's find one of those. So
Mm.
that's a lot of that is what I do.
Is
Just,
it all to
so
eventually put together like a live compilation album or something like that, or it kind of
maybe
serves multiple purposes. I
multiple,
can
right
imagine.
now it's more references, but I mean, there have
Yeah.
been times where we've gotten like, I mean, definitely, I mean, the pandemic, that was an idea. I mean, my first couple of months of the pandemic, I kind of sat down here and just went through and pulled out 10 versions of a song list they had put together
Mm.
and just sent it up and they could reference it. Not really mix, just, add the audience mics a little bit and, just kind of a reference because they could judge the performance to see if we wanted to progress with that. And that was a talk for a while, but we do a lot of, fan club releases and
Okay.
just B-sides and stuff like that. So the stuff it doesn't sit, you know what I mean? But
Right.
there
It's being
is
used.
there
Yeah.
is there is a heavy archive at this point. Like it's a lot. There's a lot there. I mean, I probably have 500 drives at home easily, and that's just not Brandi Carlisle. That's pretty much most of my career. I started multi-tracking around 2005 or 6, pretty much everything.
It must
You
be.
know.
How do you ever go back and like look at old stuff that you've done, or is it just
Yeah,
kind of that
yeah,
you do? Okay.
yeah. Every once in a while, like, oh man,
Feeling
it's
nostalgic?
not even nostalgic, just remembering how great a certain performance was. Like I still have
Sure.
Robert Randolph shows that are phenomenal, and like
Oh
Rob
yeah.
will hit me
Yeah.
up every once in a while and be like, hey man, Jam On wants to put some stuff on. I'll be like, dude, this version you guys did a Do I Do with Ryan Shaw in 2007 has been stuck in my phone forever. Or like, and there's a lot of different things, and it's also like I'll get a call from an artist I haven't worked with in a few years, and I can pull it up and go and just kind of reference. Like that's the big part of it too. It's like
Yep.
I can hear, okay, yeah, they're doing that with that and that, and just remember, because it may have been 2 or 3 years since, or even so, 5 or 10 years since I mixed a show, and it's just a great tool. I mean, my whole
Yeah.
thing now is with live sound engineers. And especially what I just kind of went through and what the accolades I just received. I'm like, at this part, it should just be a part of everybody's toolbox because it's so built into every system now. Every laptop you get has some kind of free DAW multi-track software. And what do you
Mm-hmm.
need? A USB cable or a Ethernet cable, and
Yeah. That's
you
it.
can record a full multi-track, and you don't know that there could be magic that night, and it could turn into something that and it also helps with the band. Like I just for a couple of days I helped my friend Brendan out with a band called Deep Sea Diver out of Seattle, and I was I just the first thing I said to him was like, can you get me a multi-track? And I sat down here and I just listened. Okay, Jess is playing this guitar part versus Elliot's playing this part, and this is the drums and the key and the different elements. And I at least knew that. I mean, most of the time, the greatest part about it now is you can take that multi-track into a live console in a shop and get 85, 90% there before you even walk into the building.
I
You
know
know,
that's amazing. The virtual
yeah.
element.
Yeah, and I mean, from like playing with Carbon Leaf, like you guys are kind of in that jammy kind of East Coasty, like where I came from with like Robert and the Family Band, and it's such an important the live releases are such an important part of that whole thing. I mean, it's
I
it's
was
a
actually
it's a
just
big
thinking.
thing.
Yeah, and we multi-track multi-track, or we at least record every show, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure we multi-track most of them. And I'm always thinking of like, we sell them and stuff after shows and whatever, but I'm always thinking of different. It's interesting to hear you and the way that you use them as like tools for other musicians that come in that can, rather than having to scour YouTube or something like, oh, I got to learn this the way that Brandy's doing this thing live now. you can just be like, oh, here's the performance from like a couple nights ago or from whenever. Here's like a really great one, and if you can do this, you got it. And they
Yeah,
can
and I
yeah.
mean, and you could send it to the award shows, like like
Oh, for
I
sure.
can always
Yeah.
send it, like the big one is like the Today Show. So when you do the Today Show out on the plaza, you load in at 1 o'clock in the morning,
Ugh,
and I don't think you can make noise till 5 a.m. And you get your band there while you can, and you might get one run through. Excuse me, for the engineer to go, all right, this is good,
right.
but everybody wants it to be great. But if I send them a multi-track where they can go, oh, okay, and kind of have a rough balance, once the band walks in, all you have to do is kind of move a few things, and you're like I said, you're 85 or 90% there. You can have your effects set. You can create
Yeah.
different snapshots for different songs, and you can really, really you know that line between studio and live is getting very, very small, where there was studio engineers and live engineers, and now it's live engineers are doing a lot more studio type mixing and elements into their kind of workflows. And then, like, I've had studio engineers go, hey man, you mix this band every night, what do you do to get that sound? I mean, I've had Dave Cobbs stand over my shoulder at live shows and goes, man, I
Oh
would
wow.
never have thought to done that.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never
you
really
know
thought of it that way cuz so like what would the other when somebody comes in for a situation like that, what would the other 10% be that you would have to do? Is it like, all right, drummer's hitting a little harder today or he's quieter, so I need to bump those things? Like what are the other little
I mean, the
things?
room is a
Okay.
is a massive part of it. What are you dealing with? Okay, yes, I created this big, giant, full sounding, rich mix in the house or off site, but now all of a sudden I'm in an arena where it's a giant cave and the low end
Mhm.
just rolls. Okay, what do I have to move in the mix to make this feel better in this room?
Mhm.
And then the biggest factor of that is like a sound check is, okay, great. If you overwork sound check to the point where it's like, I've EQ'd it to the point that it's brilliant. And now let's put 17,000 people in this room and you just completely changed it. And all of a sudden you're pushing back everything that you felt like the room was taking away from you.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that must be a challenge.
Yeah.
Do you ever have situations like so you how long have you been with Brandy?
It'll be 10 years in the
Okay.
fall.
So a
Yeah. Yeah.
while. How much influence does she have over what you're doing behind front of house at this point? Like I know that you probably know her show and her sound like through and through, but like how would you explain either your approach to what you're trying to get out of her in the band as and contrast to like what she wants to hear over
Well,
those
the,
the
the
course of those 10 years.
the greatest thing about the band is they want to get it right where they are. If
Mhm.
there's no PA system and no monitors, it needs to sound great right there as is. So when the microphones actually come in, it's you push it up and just reinforcing what's there. But she's also aware of what's going on, and kind of part of her monitoring is the room and the house. And it's kind of it's how to explain it is we don't use in-ears at all on the front line. Some of the string players and drummers and keyboard players, kind of the upstage band use more of that, but she's definitely a wedge. And kind of the way it works is the Brandy, Tim, and Phil feel what's coming out of the PA system.
Mhm.
And then Jerry, our monitor engineer, just kind of he feathers in just a little bit of like the clarity and the sparkle of what's not coming off the back of the sound system. And it's really it, it, it's 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 really like a team effort between all three elements: monitors, front of house, and the band. And that's kind of the vibe of what you're going for. And some days it works incredible in old theaters and certain amphitheaters and rooms like that. But in some of these places, it's like, okay, we need to turn the monitors up because baseball stadiums have these crazy reflections and stuff like that. I mean, we were on a
Right.
stadium tour all summer, and her part of the joke of the thing was is like every time I say something, it comes back to me 45 minutes later in 10 different directions or 100 different directions. So,
Right.
it's always it's never there's never a set it and forget it moment. It's never an autopilot walk in, hit recall, and that it is what it is. It's
Yeah.
the very opposite of like what kind of like a modern day pop tour with B with like click tracks and that kind of in-ears and all that, where it's a living breathing thing every night, and it's gonna be, and that's the whole thing, and is our show is gonna be absolutely 100% different every single night.
Which is
you
rad.
know what yeah, which is different songs, the way the arrangement's gonna go, different guest stars, or just everything about it is every show is special. You know what I mean?
That's the
It's
cool thing
it's
about her
never
too.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
she always like even I don't know if it's just the internet or if it's the experience of when she's playing live all around the country, but it always seems like she has some badass along with her that's up on stage.
hmm
Like does that ever throw a wrench into things for you when you're mixing, like as far as someone new coming into the situation and not really knowing, because you're not comfortable if you're up on stage, if you're used to wearing in ears, or if you're not used to a monitor, or if you're in a big room, whatever. Like, what kind of challenges does that hold for you?
That's where the jam band background
Okay.
helps me more than anything, because as much as I know, like anything can happen at any second. I remember
Yeah.
early on in my Robert Randolph days, Robert going as he's walking to stage and I'm walking in front of house. Oh yeah, by the way, Dirty Dozen's sitting in, and I'm like, which ones? He's like, all of them. So all of a sudden, it's like, here's six horn players that you didn't sound check. You don't even know where the inputs are coming from.
Yeah.
When we designed and built our touring, kind of control system, it doesn't matter what band I work for. There are guest vocal mics, guest instrument mics. I honestly, I make the joke is I have 24 channels of maybe. Okay, what if? You know, I think we have
That's great.
8 to 10, we have 8 to 10 wireless handhelds that at any point could go anywhere. But our system's also designed because when you say Brandi Carlisle could be the Brandi Carlisle band, which has been up to 10 or 11 people,
Wow.
or it could be Brandi Carlisle Trio with Brandi, Tim, and Phil,
Mm-hmm.
or Brandi Carlisle Trio with strings, or Brandi Carlisle solo,
Mm-hmm.
or Brandi Carlisle with a symphony orchestra, which I have inputs for that,
Wow.
or it could become the Joni Mitchell Blue Show, which is Brandi doing blue from start to finish with a lot of the original players who played on the original record.
That's
Um,
bananas.
it could be the Highwomen, which is a completely different band,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also turned into the Joni Jam. It became Annie Lennox in January,
Wow.
all on the exact same equipment. There's different similarities. There's players who are the same and whatnot, but it's also 100% the opposite direction. What it could be. I mean, a Joni Jam is like at Newport. We went from a full Brandi Carlisle polished aluminum sets with drums and keyboards and guitar amps and string players and our full on show in 15 minutes to couches, carpets, end tables, stuff like that, and turned it into Joni's living room for this intimate performance on the
Is,
main stage at Newport.
is that something that was pre-planned, like something that was gonna always happen, or did it kind of occur
Yes,
naturally? Okay.
that I mean, we had to get
Yeah.
set pieces and
I don't
furniture,
suppose.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
no, but I mean, there are times where, hey, so and so's walking out, and you don't know. And I mean, sometimes I've been completely blown away and surprised, but it's like, oh, wow, Sarah McLachlan walks out and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Here comes the duet of Eyes of the Angel. And you're like, all of a sudden you're like, um, I mean, on the Hendrix tour, I remember once we were at the Warfield in San Francisco, and I got the phone, I got the comm thing. Hey, can you turn up vocal mic right now? And you throw up vocal mic one, and it's Living Color with Joe Satriani doing Foxy Lady, which they would do every night, and then you
Yeah.
just hear "Hello, baby," and it's Sammy Hagar, and you're like, okay, no idea where that was coming from. But it's always been like that, and those are the things that keep it interesting. And at this point, I don't sweat it. I know a lot of, you know, t- engineers, technicians would be like, we didn't rehearse it, we didn't do that. I just go, yeah, just tell me what fader it's coming down, and I'll turn it up.
Yeah.
Mothership, we had Nickel Creek walk out and just be a part of the show right then and there. And I mean, that's a whole nother level of musicianship. That's your Yo-Yo Ma, it's like Perlman level of musicianship. Like, you
Hmm.
know, that's another thing. And yeah, you roll with it. Sometimes, yeah, every once in a while, yeah, you miss it. Okay, great, I missed that. But as long as you get the meat and potatoes of it, you got the vocal. The vocal's the most important part. As long as you get that, the people hear what they sing. Everything else is just spice and color in the painting, and you know,
Right. And that's only something
yeah.
that you can learn over just years and years of experience,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
nice.
I like it's if you trace my career, I've done different elements of things that kind of relate it to what is what makes me do what I do now. Like, because I mix theater shows where it doesn't change.
Hmm.
There's no variation in that. It's a script, right?
Right.
Um, I've done jam bands, I've done metal bands, I've mixed broadcast, where broadcast is, excuse me, rehearsed to the point of, once again, but, a Robert Randolph or a Word show, set list, what's that? Let's just see where this goes, and
Yeah.
some of those nights are just amazing as well,
Yeah. I
I
remember
mean, as amazing.
speaking of Robert Randolph, I remember being on the Sail Across the Sun cruise with Kellogg, and Robert and him had just either recorded or Robert recorded a song that Stephen had wrote.
Yeah.
Um, and he was on Robert Randolph was on stage, and I was there just hanging out, one of the big collaborative shows that they have on these cruise ships and stuff. And he brought me up to sing the first verse of The Wait, and I was
Mhm.
literally standing right next to Robert, and like me, like I have to have something in my hands to feel comfortable, like either being
Yeah.
behind a guitar or behind a drum set or something like that. And just Robert's ability to like roll with stuff and roll with this dude that's like never in the front of the stage, that's super uncomfortable with a microphone in his hand, singing in front of like, a couple thousand people. It was rad, man. He's a cool guy. That
My
must have
my
been fun
fa-
to work with him.
My favorite one is my wife and I, because actually my wife was friends with him actually before I was. She was kind of like their first fan, and kind of that's how we met. But one of the Eric Clapton Crossroads DVDs is it's pretty brilliant, because we had played earlier in the day, and I think he's done all of them. I did like the first four with him,
Okay.
but the big jam at the end out on stage in Chicago in the stadium, they just invited everybody up. Well, he's the only pedal steel player there. I mean, it's Joe Bonamassa, Derek and Susan,
Yeah.
every
The
guitar
who's
player
who.
who's a guitar player at that. But yeah, Gary Clark, everybody. And we remember, like, he's like, I don't know if I want to do it. I don't know. We literally like grabbed him and threw him out on stage
You're
because I
doing
had
it.
already well, I mean, I put the steel out there. It had to go out there. Like, there was no, like, it's like, it's there. You got to go sit behind it. And like, and it's BB's jam. This is before
Oh shit.
BB passed. And if you watch the DVD, Robert just comes out, lays into it, and BB's like, "Go ahead, play, man, play." And he transcended it, and that's what he would do. That's where he was, and it's that improvisation of music. Sometimes it's just amazing when things just go, and you see
Yeah.
where it goes. It can, I mean, that's kind of my favorite stuff. You know,
Man, that's the
you know,
best. How
yeah.
often do you ever get back to be able to do sound for him? Are you in contact with him anymore, or is that just
Oh yeah, I
some?
mean, we
Yeah.
we talk, we text back and forth.
Oh, cool.
I've done it a couple of times. Actually, The Word was the last band I mixed before the world shut down.
Mm.
It's funny because we did a festival in Tampa, Florida, and Brandi headlined the Saturday night, and then the Sunday was somebody. They're from Portland. I'm so the band's escapes my name.
Mm.
It's not Young the Giant, but it's kind of like that era style thing. But the band right before him, I had gotten a phone call from a buddy of mine, and he said, "Hey, do you want to come in and do North Mississippi All Stars, or just stay an extra day?" And I've tour managed and did front of house for those guys on and off for years, and I love those guys. I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, I'd love to, no problem." Well, I come to find out, like agreeing to this, I didn't realize it was a word show. So it's like, oh, it's Rob and
Oh,
Medeski and the All Stars, and I'm like, it's like the jam band All Star band, and like walk in, I'm like, oh, hey, Rob, and yeah, it was, and that was it, and then literally flew home, and the world shut down
ugh,
2 days later. It was over, you
that's
know.
crazy. We had a similar experience. Like we were on the road. We were in the middle of a tour when it's just like, oh, there's less people here than usual. The next night, oh, there's a little less, and people are standing a little further away from each other. Oh, what's going on? And then, sure enough, it's like, oh, you're next. All of your shows are canceled.
Yeah, everything, everything.
Just like, eh, terrible.
I went to Tool the night I got home. I remember I flew back to
Oh,
Portland, and I went down to see Tool, which is, I mean, I love that band, and it's it's one of the bands that like I just want to go and be a fan of.
was that the
And they hooked
tour?
me
Was
up.
that the tour that they came? It was like they had just released like their second album or something after a long period of time.
No, they had released a Fear Inoculum, and it was like 10 or 11 years since
Yeah,
they'd done it, right?
but it was that
And
tour,
it
right?
was the first show was in Portland, Oregon, right?
Oh
And
man.
where I live. And we went down, and I was kind of milling around with some people, talking to them after the show, kind of hanging back. And one point, the whole crew disappears. Like the loadout stopped. I mean, you're talking a big, giant, many semi truck, like
Yeah.
big labor costs show, and they all disappeared. And then everybody came back. They're like, "We're all going home
Oh shit.
tomorrow." You know,
Damn.
send the trucks back to the shop, and yeah, and that was it. And then I became a recording slash live stream slash, you know, what do you need me to do for
Yeah.
archivist for 18 months or so?
You got to adapt. It's crazy. Did Brandy
Oh
have
no,
anything
yeah.
going on as far as did she do anything during the pandemic, or was
Oh
it just
yeah,
kind of shut
yeah,
it down?
yeah.
Okay.
No, we did a lot. I worked pretty much full time through the whole
Okay.
pandemic, and they were wonderful, and they definitely took great care. It was a lot of work, but a lot of fun and a
Hmm.
lot of new skills. So any of the content stuff, remember those videos that everybody would float around, like you send your part and that. And
Yeah.
then we developed like a web series that actually was really successful.
Oh,
We
sick.
called them compound quarantine shows, because they all live on a big compound up north of kind of north of Portland, but east of Seattle.
Hmm.
And the first couple were shaky, and we got really good at it. And then we were doing them, I think, like every week or 2 weeks, and they were a lot of fun. And we figured out how to interact with fans and everybody, and take phone calls on air. And the thing about our live stream was it was 100% live. Like if it went off the
Cool.
rails, it went off the rails. It wasn't like we taped it, remixed it. It was like, no, I mixed that stuff on the fly. And and it was all hands on deck. Brandy's wife was sitting next to me directing and switching cameras, and
That's cool.
Tim's wife was running camera, and I mean we had the kids doing stuff, and Phil's wife was doing hair and makeup, and it turned out to be, and then we started doing like special shows where we would do one of the whole albums. We're going to do By the Way I Forgive You from beginning to end, or we're going to do Bear Creek. And then we did a couple of really great ones. We did a campfire one, which honestly stands out more so with them than any of them, where we actually set up on her back porch in the fall. So it was chilly in front of her fire pit, and
Yeah.
as stripped down as the regular compound shows were, this one was really stripped down, but it was kind of magic that night. Just everything was just, and it wound up running like 2.5 hours, and it was
Wow.
awesome.
I feel
Yeah,
like she
and
flourishes in those kinds of environments because her voice. I mean, her voice can carry anything, and just in a stripped down environment like that, it just kind of frees up a lot of space for possibilities to happen. You can add different things in, and I never saw it,
mhm.
but I imagine that it that's one of the reasons that made it so special.
And that's the magic of that. Like she can go into any situation and just be such a part of it and such an integral part of it, and up just take it to another level when you're there. But also, like you said, kind of that stripped down smaller thing. I still tell everybody, like, I have my 128 input monster set up with the full band and percussion and strings and all this stuff. And I still tell everybody, the smaller the show gets for me, the harder it is to mix.
Mm.
Great, I got the 11 piece. Well, there's a lot of stuff to hide behind when you have all that stuff going on.
So
But
that's an interesting point. Yeah.
when you get down to an acoustic guitar and a vocal,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing to hide behind. It better be good. If you're going to use reverb and different delays and effects and stuff like that, you better make sure they're spot on. Because otherwise it's just distracting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Because you
when
can
you
hear
when
it
you
all.
get down, yeah, when you get to the intimacy, and you'll see me more like that, where with the big show, kind of, okay, Tim's going to do a guitar lead here, or this keyboard line is kind of the hook in the song here, but always making sure the vocals on top, or like, you know, especially with her music, a lot of the effects, the reverbs and delays and stuff are such big parts of the song. Like, it's also been told to me, it's like you're playing an instrument in this band. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
joke is kind of the perfect example when she does that big yell and it washes away into kind of like a reverb that is a part of kind of the hook of the song.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when we were out promoting that song, like with TV and award shows and all that, I just always remember like the Grammys, like going in and telling the engineers, I'm like, all right, when she does that yell, you take that reverb and push it all the way up. And they're like, if you think it's too much, go farther. And you're getting there, you
Yeah.
know. And in context, until they hear it and see it, they go, oh, yep, that's it. That's why it works.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah,
speaking
yeah,
of that, you won a small award recently.
I did. Yeah, it's it's in my son's room right now. I was fortunate enough. I got Joni Mitchell won the folk album of the year for Joni Mitchell Live at Newport, and I
So cool.
happened to be the engineer who recorded it, and I received a Grammy for it.
That's
You know,
that. I
if I
mean,
had thought about it, I would have brought it down, but it's literally up in my kid's room right
that's
now.
all right. That's all right. I'll post a
Yeah,
picture of it or something.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, just as a musician, and myself, and then you as an engineer and someone that's been around music and mixed so many people over the years. I mean, it must just be like getting a Grammy is like the pinnacle of recognition.
Oh, it's,
It must
it's
feel unbelievable to have received that, and it's well deserved. Like you're incredible at what you do, so it's like goes hand in hand. But like, what does that mean to you to have a Grammy in your son's room?
um It's overwhelming, and it's still overwhelming. I'm a live sound engineer. Like, I had aspirations to be a recording producer, engineer, mixer for about an hour. And then I watched somebody like spend 3 days trying to get a kick drum sound, and I went, well, I usually have about 2 minutes to get a kick drum sound. So, and I kind of love the instantaneous thing of the live world but also when it's over, it's over. Once the show's over, there's no do over. It's gone. But never ever in my life thought that this would happen. If you had asked, excuse me, 17 or 18-year-old me, I thought maybe because I did a lot of like theater stuff early on, and I was kind of being pushed in like a theatrical sound designer kind of position. I was like, maybe I'll get towards a theater award one day, not a Tony, but something like that. But no, a Grammy, never. Live sound engineers don't win Grammys ever. They don't win.
Apparently they do.
Well, I guess, and my buddy Chris Biggs, I got a shout out. He got one. He was working with Third Day, and he recorded one of their records, and he received one as well, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, it was overwhelming. I remember the minute I found out they were going to release it as a record. We were doing the Beach Boys tribute in L.A. right after the Grammy Awards, the one year. And I kind of got a phone call from management going, hey, can you come down to the dressing room? Band wants to talk to you, which everybody knows that as a crew person, when you hear that, you're like, uh-oh, what did I do? Bad news. And I go down, and Brandi, Tim, and Phil pulled me into the dressing room. They're like, hey, we just wanted to tell you, we just talked to Joni, and we're going to release Newport as a record, and you're being billed as the sole engineer on it.
Damn.
Recording engineer. I was like,
I got chills when you just said that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. And it was kind of the end of like a really kind of hard couple of weeks, kind of around the award season things, because you're doing different things, and you're like, oh wow, cool. Also at the same time, it's like, to me, it was like I just got a credit on a Joni Mitchell record as a recording engineer, right? And that right then and there, okay, awards, I don't know what's gonna happen, but then to see it get nominated, and you're like, oh. Okay,
it's like
cool.
I could win a Grammy right now.
But you look at that category, and it's like Paul Simon, Nickel Creek, Rufus Wainwright. Just like you're like, you want to talk about a stacked category. Right. You're like, okay, when it actually happened, I remember because so. Anybody who's not worked on the Grammys before, it's a process. It usually starts about a week out, and you get a night where you come in and you spend a couple of hours, adjusting the set, and then you sound check, and then you do a couple different sound checks, you do a couple of different blocking checks, and you do a camera check, and then we had happened to do it on Saturday night, Friday or Saturday. I think we did it on Saturday night, because in years past you do it on either the Thursday or Friday, and you get a day or two off. But then you have to be at the Staples Center at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning the next day, and I think at 8 or 9 you run that show from beginning to end as if it's there, right? So when we did the full sound check night where we spent time with it, we didn't have Lucius, who were kind of the primary voices in the thing. And this is the first time I think Joni had ever played the Grammy Awards also. So the next day we come in to do the full dress rehearsal, and we don't have Joni. Brandi stepped up and kind of sang her part. So at this part, the front of house engineer, the truck engineer, and the monitor engineer at this point hasn't had everybody. But the sound checks went great, and I'm a little bit what do you call it, superstitious. So I was like, okay, and everybody, we were all like, man, great rehearsal, blah blah blah. Joni was in great voice, but I was kind of like, okay, I just hope that the dress rehearsal doesn't go good. You got to tank one of them in order for the main one to be perfect. And I kind of looked at the rest of the rest of our crew. I was like,
if it goes bad, then the show will be good, or vice versa.
Yeah. And then Joni wasn't there for rehearsal, so we're like, okay.
Uh-oh.
And then everybody goes over to the pre-telecast ceremony, and well, there was five of us there, and I'm going to shout out everybody. It was myself, Kelly Cerna, who's like our assistant production manager, production coordinator, Tim Rittenauer, who's our production manager, also credible engineer, mixes Nickel Creek, Jerry Streeter, who's my partner in crime, our monitor engineer, and my buddy Jesse was looking after any kind of instruments on stage that day. So they were nice enough to let us kind of keep. We have a lot of vintage instruments and stuff in Mike Abbott, who's the audio director, in an old friend's office. So it was kind of our stuff and Billy Joel's stuff in the office. So he was nice enough. We just kind of hung out there, and they were like, "You want to go to the pre-telecast?" And I'm like, "No, no, I'm just gonna hang here. I just want to kind of keep my head in the game." And they were watching the pre-telecast, and it got announced, and my crew was more excited because they just realized Sean just won the Grammy. Yes, Joni got it, but Sean just got it. So I couldn't talk. I was like,
Yeah.
and I was just like, it played with my head a lot more
This
than
is
I
the
thought it
coolest thing
would.
ever. So
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. And then I had to walk away, and I had to make the initial phone calls. I talked to my wife and my son, and then I talked to like my mom and dad and my siblings, and there were three other people I really wanted to reach out to, probably three of the biggest mentors and influences in my life. My buddy Ricky Rohr, who I grew up in Menands, New York with, had a PA system, and he let me take whatever I wanted. I wound up mixing his 50s band. I was like 13. I had no idea what I was doing, but he was at. So I called Ricky. I called Pat Bailey, who is another local upstate New York sound legend, just the greatest guy in the world, and Matt Eli, who's like my brother, closest thing I've ever had to an older brother. We had the sound company together, and he kind of taught me everything. So I literally had to call those guys just to let them know and really just thank them. That's all I wanted to do, was just thank them at that point. You win an award like that, and you literally want to call everybody who like ever gave you a cassette or took you to a concert or introduced you to a band that you love to this day,
Right.
my aunts and uncles and stuff like that. And, after that initial thing set in, I literally had to go like, okay, back to the game at hand. You still have to put Joni Mitchell on stage at the Grammy Awards for the first time ever, and it needs to be perfect and flawless.
So
So
you were,
that was
yeah.
that that
No,
was
I'm
the
sorry. Go
crazy
ahead.
part, man. Yeah, that was the crazy part. It was like you had to like go 360 and be like, all right, game face, put your suit on. But it was still it was still great when I actually had to walk out to the front of house mixer for the performance when it happened. Leslie Ann Jones, who's legend, tears in her eyes, came up and gave me a hug, and she was like,
Oh,
you're in the club now." She's got a bunch of Grammy awards for engineering, pioneer as an engineer, and kind of gave me a big hug and was like, you know, and just so sweet.
how cool is that? And you mentioned before
Yeah.
that you that you had to mention to the mixers at the Grammys, like, if you think you've gone too far with the reverb, go further. Um, so you are giving them direction on how to mix that performance because they're the mixers. Like, does any other artist mixers mix during the Grammys, or that's not a thing?
No, no, not normally. Normally for these award shows, they have their people, and you kind of come in almost like a producer, almost. So
Gotcha.
when we do things like that, we will bring Jerry, our monitor engineer, and myself. So during the sound checks, Jerry will go up on stage, kind of rough the monitors in, and then I'll go to front of house and work with them, and everybody works together. Then at some point, you go to the truck because there's three mixers usually on these big broadcast setups. You have your monitor engineer who's mixing for the band. You have your front of house engineer who's mixing for the arena or the theater, and then you have your broadcast mixer, which is what everybody hears.
Hmm.
So the way it works is they have their people, and these guys are, these people are the best of the best. They are the best of the best, and they're super hospitable, and they know, like, and at this point I've been doing this 30 years. I know them all. I consider them all friends, and they hey, can you make that vocal pop a little bit more, pull this element back, and that's what you do. um The only time you would mix your own stuff is normally if you bring your own equipment in,
Mm.
which a show like the Grammys, you can't. They're already strapped for space. The real show is honestly if you can watch backstage to watch this stuff just move around.
Oh, I bet
Um,
it's so impressive.
it's
It's like
incredible. You watch this massive, Travis Scott set turn into Joni Mitchell's living room
crazy.
like this. But you watch it as the show it rolls and goes out the back end of the building and is broken down and is gone in a matter of minutes. But certain TV shows, like when you do the Today Show, you'll bring in your monitor system and your front of house system. So like I'll mix that one. But like if you go do, the Tonight Show or
Hmm.
you know, Kimmel, I think Kimmel, if you're outdoors on the big stage, you can bring your stuff in if you want. It all depends. Like, is your stuff there? Sometimes when you do these things, you just fly in. When we do the Grammys, we kind of just show up with guitars and we source they have contracts with big rental companies and stuff like that. So they bring it in and the stuff looks gorgeous. So, I mean, you can get whatever drum kit you want. If you say I play a 50s Gretsch kit, they'll bring a 50s Gretsch kit for you.
That's rad. That's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, and it's kind of easier on their production if you don't show up with a 53-foot truck, another one. I mean, there are certain acts, like if U2 shows up, yeah, U2 is gonna bring U2,
Right.
You bring your specialty key pieces that aren't aren't easily sourced. You know what I mean? I'll bring the gold microphones. They're always with me, and anything I think, I'll bring maybe the lead guitar amp mic or something like that.
Or
If
yeah.
there's something different, you bring, like as a drummer, you'd bring your sticks and your cymbals, let's say.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Essentials.
but yeah, you bring your essentials, just, because you want to, you don't want to be known as the act that, like, when you show up, they're like, oh boy, here they come again. They're going to
Right.
be demanding or take up too much space, or, my whole goal is I always just want to be a part of the team. I always want to feel like I'm part of the positivity and moving it forward.
Right. That's super cool. Does
Yeah.
Brandi
Yeah.
provide you and the crew with matching tracksuits? Because I know that's
That's, that's,
is that on your
that's still the
rider? Is
great.
that on your
No.
contract?
Dude, that was so funny. Dude, tell me we didn't have so much fun on that run.
It was really, really fun. So for anyone listening, we're referencing Stephen Kellogg tour that we were both on, where and the thing that Stephen does, which I think is really cool, is it's either like a sweatshirt or something that has your name or your nickname on the actual jacket or the sweatshirt, and it's unbelievable because what the story that we're about to tell is just so par for the course, but really hilarious. We all happened to be wearing these jackets. They were
Black and purple.
black and purple with
Black
like,
and purple.
yeah, with the stripes or like Adidas stripes, and we were all wearing them for that day for some reason. I don't know why we all had them on, and like every time I'm driving through, where were we? Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Yeah, because I'll never forget the town because it was Rawlings, Wyoming. Because
Rawlings, Wyoming.
I've been stuck there with Stephen in a windstorm, and I got stuck there with Carbon Leaf once. I got stuck in that particular town like 3 times, and this one time we go into the. I don't even. Do you remember the name of the place? It was just like
No,
this,
it was like a cowboy bar
yeah, this
that kind of
podunk.
served like podunk, but it was like I just remember eating like some kind of like
Like
hybrid burrito.
yeah, like
Yeah, like some kind of
Tex-Mex.
like, but not even like Tex-Mex, like cowboy burrito. I remember it had potatoes in it. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
And we all, it was what, how many of us? It was uh,
Oh, there had to be 6 of
3,
us.
4,
I think it
5.
was
Yeah, so
5.
Shady,
Right?
you, me, Andy,
Fretless Andy.
Fretless Andy, and
Fretless Andy.
Steven.
And Steve?
Sarah
Because
wasn't
your
there.
wife,
Was Sarah there?
yeah, I think your wife had flown home by that point.
Yeah, she was only on the west. She was on the West Coast. She
She
did
was only on the
Seattle
West
and Portland.
Coast.
But yeah,
What was the tour manager? There was the tour man. I was tour managing, but originally Steven had a tour manager. What was
so I
what's
think it
her
was
name?
Shady. Well, it was either Sarah or Shady. It was probably Sarah.
Sarah. Sarah. Yeah, no, I came in that tour. I mean that is one of my every part of that. Honestly, that was a tour that I've felt more emotions on than I've ever felt in my life, and I think that's just being around Stephen Kellogg because he's such an emotional, beautiful human being
Uh huh.
that it reflects on all of us. And I mean, I'm talking emotions from anger to sadness to pure joy to just every kind of emotion we went through on that run from
Yeah.
like the beginning. And I just remember putting his poor manager through hell because have you ever heard the story about how I even got on that?
I mean, I don't know any details about it, but I'm
I
sure
I've known
with Jessica. You're talking with
Steven.
Jessica.
Yeah, with Jessica, like I put
Okay.
that. I mean, I apologize. I put her through hell. I think she was pregnant or had just had a baby at the time, and she would call me up. And she'd be like, "Can you start on this date?" I'm like, "Maybe." Can you start on this date? Maybe. Can I go home by this point? Because I was still, I was in Brandy world,
Right.
and that's my main thing. But Steven called me out of the blue. Now I met Steven Kellogg when he was with the Sixers and they opened a couple of Robert Randolph dates a million years ago. I'm talking in the early 2000s. And, it was the opening act, so we're getting our stuff ready. But I just remember being like, this guy's nuts. Because after every song, he would introduce himself to the crowd. We're playing like a college festival.
I'm gonna have to take this out. Steven's gonna kill me.
No, no, no. This is great. This is great, right? We're doing like a college festival, and the thing I loved about it is I would look up and after every song he would introduce himself as somebody different. We're playing it was George Washington University, I think in DC, and he'd play a song with those guys and go, "Thanks a lot, I'm Howie Day. Thanks a
No
lot,
way.
I'm John Mayer. Thanks a lot." Like he would, I'm just like, and then at one point during a song,
I
because it's a
love that.
typical like spring fest at a college, they had inflatable shit and like all the you know, whatever, like you get for a kid's backyard party. He
Sure.
takes his guitar off, jumps off stage, does a lap around, and starts diving through these things while the band's still playing, then comes back up on stage and finishes the set. And I was like,
Like,
what
who
is
is
up
this
with
guy?
this guy? And
That's
then I
great.
got to know him. I got to know him through oh OAR. I went to work for OAR for a while. Had a great time
Okay.
with those guys. I love those guys. They're like family. And he was out writing with Mark a lot, so he would come out on tour with us.
Yeah,
And he was
he still writes with Mark quite a bit.
yeah, he
I'm
still
sure.
writes with Mark. And then I have a group of friends, and we like produce like events at like ski mountains and stuff like that. Like
Oh,
we do
sure.
Sundance, and he was one of our cats, like our buddies who would just come up and play. Like Steven would play too. Or we'd give him a night up at the Montage or something like that. And we always just loved Steven. And they loved giving him a hard time because he doesn't like real maple syrup. He likes fake maple syrup. And our guys would
I
just give him a
completely
hard
forgot that.
and they would wind him up because they're all from Vermont and New Hampshire and all that, and they would give
Yeah.
him a hard time. But we loved Steven when he would come to these events. And I always, he would just turn up by himself, and I'd always take care of him, and we'd have a good time. And he called me out of the blue one night, and I remember I was home in Oregon and just hanging out with my son was an infant. He was maybe like 2. Steve called me up, and he's like, "Hey man, what's going on?" I don't want to quote, maybe you can ask him. I think he'd been drinking. He goes, "Hey man, what are you up to?" He goes, "I'm going to ask you something. I know you're going to say no right off the bat, but I figured I'd just give it a shot. And, I get it. Yeah, I get it that you can't do it already." I was like, he didn't even ask the question. He's like, "Hey, man, I got a run coming up in like the spring. Would you go on tour with me?" And he goes, "Yeah, I understand. I know you can't do it." I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." He's like, "It's in a van. It's a couple of us. You'd have to tour manage and do front of house." I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And he goes, "Well, okay, man." And he just
That's
kept
great.
going like, "Okay, I understand, man." I was like, "Hey, I said
I said
yes."
yes.
Yes. And then the whole thing with me torturing Jess to be like, I could do this and I can't do that. But we wound up working it out where this is where the emotion starts. And the emotion starts with anger, right? Anger. We
Okay.
started in Portland, remember? We started in Portland, Oregon at the Analog Cafe.
Well,
It's gone now.
We started with you in Portland.
Portland. But do you
Right.
remember that show? Do you remember when
was it
the death metal?
an upstairs place?
Yes, and they were awful to us. They were
Oh
awful to
yeah.
us from the moment we loaded in to the
I
moment we loaded out.
I do remember that. I do remember that place. Yes, that place was terrible.
Terrible. It started from the minute they opened the door, and I'm tormented. And honestly, I got to be honest.
It's like they had a meeting. It's like they had a meeting before we showed up, and they're like, "We're gonna be complete dicks to these guys all night."
as bad as we can be to them.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest with you, and I love you, Stephen. That was the gig that ended my tour manager career, like front of house TM gig. I'm like, no, I'm done doing this. I had enough of this. But we load in, and I'm a pretty decent sound engineer. Like, I understand physics and stuff like that. And there were a few things I just asked the sound I asked the sound engineer like a couple of questions about the PA system, and he got confrontational with me about it. I was like, "Whoa!"
Remember that?
I'm just remember that. Asking. But I remember doing the advance, so I started doing the advance for Jessica on the whole tour, and I remember calling this place, and all the guy kept telling me about the place was Sir Mix-a-Lot and Weezer both played there.
Oh.
Not any of the questions, right? Nothing like, hey man, can we get a case of water? What's the load in like? Can you send me the tech specs for the room? Just, can we do a schedule? All I kept saying, hey man, just so you know, Weezer and Sir Mix-a-Lot played here and they loved it. Well, I found out Weezer didn't love it. And you're like, okay, Sir Mix-a-Lot? Sure, And it was too full.
What a ridiculous, like, dickhead thing to say. It's
just
that's crazy.
Every time he brought it up. And then when the sound guy got confrontational with me, the owner called me and he's watching us via security cameras at home and starts yelling at me. And he's like, now it's, Sir Mix-a-Lot or Weezer didn't have these problems when they were there. And I'm going, I don't have any problems. I was just asking questions. I'm just trying to, And like the bar staff and everybody were like, and you just heard him like out loud, like, yeah, it's some singer songwriter guy. And we're just like, what is going on here?
You're bringing back so many memories. I remember those exact words being said, some singer songwriter, because in the green room, there was like a curtain. There was no door or anything. So we heard them talking shit like right outside the door. And it's like, what is happening here? And then my buddy, who's actually from Portland, lives in Portland, came to the show that night, and he was like, "Oh, this place sucks."
Yeah.
And of course, rightfully so, they're gone now. So,
I work around town here sometimes, and every place is great. It's so much fun. When I first moved here, I would do gigs at the Crystal Ballroom, and it was just the funnest thing ever, right?
Hey, is the Doug Fir still around?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Are they just...
Yeah, they're moving it.
Closed?
They're temporarily closed, and I think they're moving it.
Okay.
But even that place, it was always fun.
I like that place a lot. That's our usual place that we play in Portland, and then we played a different place that was more downtown last time. And I really liked playing Mississippi Studios
that's a fun gig too. Yeah,
that's a great room. And this was a tour before that tour with Stephen, but I was with Stephen and we played there and it was awesome. I really love that room, and I like a dry sounding room, and that was like the very dry room. And for drums, I particularly love that sound from stage. I like to have that experience because I can feel everything. You have all like the little minute details. You can really feel and hear like the real sound of the drums. You're not dealing with all the room and whatever in a bad room. But I really enjoyed playing that place, and I haven't been there since that first tour I did with Steven. So I'd love to go back there with Carbon Leaf or whoever or whatever.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's like a listening room, and it's great, and the audio is great, the production is great, the people who work there are great, and it's fun, it's in a cool neighborhood,
Yeah. That's where
the funniest...
That was a run that we got Adidas like promo codes to get shoes. Were you there when that happened?
maybe.
I don't know. It's not important. Anyway, go ahead.
Um, but the thing that kicked off that night at that cafe was, so Steven's up there and he's doing a brilliant set and he's singing these amazing songs and you guys are killing it, and he's singing these great emotional songs about his family and his kids and all that, and literally Slayer fires up downstairs. I'm trying to mix this intimate show and give it feel and depth and all that, and it's literally like the loudest death metal band you've ever heard, and it's shaking the building.
Yeah, it just like it ruined the whole vibe.
It
completely
just
ruined
killed it. And then they kind of like threw us out of the building. But that was the start, and that was the only time that it was. Everything else was pretty. But when I say it was emotional, man, the stuff we did on that tour. Do you remember what we did, man? We went to Columbine High School, and Steven spoke at Columbine.
Yep.
The night I left was the night that Tom Petty died.
Oh, that was
heavy, man. Like, I'm talking emotion on this tour. I mean, going to Columbine and feeling that, because I was TMing, so I had to go with them to it. But utter joy and laughter and just funny how much fun we would go to baseball game. The Cowboy Bar. Dude, we all just walked in.
What a great tour. What great memories. Like, you're bringing up all these, like, going to the Rockies game. That was
We went to the Rockies
fun.
game.
So fun.
And I mean,
it's great.
I just remember, but I remember like the night of it, I forgot, we were somewhere in the Midwest, and Tom's lighting designer for like 30 years, Kevin, who was buddies with Steven. Everybody knew Tom. I think Tom was in a coma or he was on life support, and we remember I had brought some like Tom bootlegs we listened to in the van while we drove.
Yeah.
And I remember Kevin, he like jumped on his motorcycle and rode like 300 or 400 miles.
Yeah, it was
just to come hang with
some ridiculous distance just to come to the show.
We played this place and Steven went in. He goes, "Listen, Quack, this guy who owns this place is my buddy. It's literally like 50 people. There's no stage. You're going to be in the corner. It's one of those stick things. You're not really mixing, just kind of balance it a little bit." And it was an amazing show. And it was amazing. And then at the end of the night, Kevin turned up and they cleared the place out. And the owner was wonderful. And he started cooking us food and we all sat around. And I remember Steven, we started, singing along and playing songs. But Kevin kind of gave us the like, yeah, man, he's gone kind of thing. And it's just, like I said, man, emotion like you wouldn't believe. And something like that just makes you love it so much again. Not that him dying, but just going through it all with a group of people who you instantaneously bond with when you meet them. I mean, I got in a van with you guys. I knew Steven a little bit from like hanging with him on these ski gigs. I don't think we had ever met. I'd never met Andy.
No.
I never met Shady. Honestly, the part that made me easy to ease into this the first couple of shows was we got in the van the next morning out in North Portland, and your wife was with us.
Yeah.
She had an Irish accent, so right then and there that put me at ease. And you were wearing a Red Sox hat, so I was like, "All right, we're good. We're okay. We're okay. I'll be good here." My whole family's Irish, so as soon as I heard her speak, I was like, "Okay." It kind of puts me. I'm not kidding. It puts me at ease. Yeah,
The funny thing is, it's something about that accent. It's like it hooks you in. It just gets you. Like she's a GM at a big hotel that was like not doing so great when she took it over, and then completely turned it around and like acts like she doesn't know what happened. I'm like, it was you. Like you
did a good job.
your like ability to listen to people and talk to them and put them at ease created a good environment of employees, which in turn made the hotel a successful hotel. So it's just like, yeah, that quality, just the accent, but everything else too, just makes it makes it great. I'm glad that she put you at ease when
Well,
you joined the
I'm
tour.
se- I'm s- I'm second generation United States. My family's from Ireland, so
Oh,
like
okay. What part of Ireland?
we Kerry, County
Beautiful.
Kerry, and Tralee where my family is and from. And you
Yeah.
probably know this term. You if you ask anybody, it's like, are you going home? And
Mm.
home isn't my house here in Oregon or your house. Home is Ireland.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the
yeah.
first time I got asked, I went over as a kid, and it was my first time going there, and they sat me next to an older lady on an airplane. This is back when people would chain smoke in airplanes. I was a kid, and she looked at me and said, "How long has it been since you've been home?" And I went, "Well, no, I grew up in upstate New York. That's home." She goes, "No,
Yeah.
you don't understand. You're going home." And until you go there, you get it. And then once you're there, you know, and honestly, if you bump into anybody Irish, friends who tour or stuff like that, or family members, you can say, "Hey, how long has it been since you've been home?" And they, and it's
Yeah.
it's a thing. So
And they know
she just put me
exactly
at
what.
ease.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
She just, yeah.
That's
But
so
man, that
cool.
tour, yeah. But the cowboy bar thing, I just remember, like, the reason we all had them on was it was freezing. There was still snow on the ground in Wyoming.
Uh-huh.
And Steven turned and looked at us and said, "All right, boys, everybody jack it up." Right. And we got the giggles at first, like, "Oh, this is going to be hilarious." And then we walked in like it was Animal House, like when they
Record
go to
stops.
yeah, the record stops. And there was, I remember we all got in and everybody was staring. I mean, I'm talking guys at the bar who look like Sam Elliott in The Big Lebowski. I mean, like that kind
Like,
of like
who the
Yosemite
fuck
Sam
are
look.
these?
But do you remember there was one woman of color in the place who took one look at us and said, "Oh, hell no,"
I
right? We looked,
do remember. That was the best part of the whole thing.
that was the best part. Like, okay, this lady's going to have her back. We kind of looked like if there was such a thing as a Christian corn cover band.
Oh my god.
That's what we looked like. A Christian rock corn cover band.
Oh hell no. Oh my god. That was so funny. And then we just sat at the table and laughed the whole time. We were
We
just
we
like
couldn't
couldn't stop
we
laughing.
laughed for we laughed for days. We laughed for days on end. And like with all that emotion going around, man, it was just like we couldn't believe it. Like we would just be driving silent in the van and it would just break out to the point where we were dying laughing because this whole thing was just like this just happened. Like
It was
you
outrageous.
couldn't you couldn't write this in a movie.
Oh my god. It
Oh,
was so funny.
that whole tour, that's one of those things that just makes you happy. It makes you remember while you do this, because we all get on those
Hmm.
tours. Like I get on tours, it's like you walk in and it's like, okay, where's catering? These big giant places that kind of all look the same. Your
Yep.
stuff all goes in the same place, and you just kind of like, it's not that you get used to it, you just become oblivious to it.
You're in a bubble. You get bubbleized.
You're completely in a bubble. Like,
Hmm.
and it's like we were on a tour with Pink all summer in baseball stadiums, which was awesome because you got to see all the ballparks. But it was
That's
like in
cool.
the same time, you're like, okay, you get off the bus, there's the sign, and it's the same thing every day. You wake up on a day off, a little bit later, and on the table on the bus is a hotel room key, and you go there, and you just get in this thing where it was like, I think like the first night we were out, like I just remember Stevens going like, "All right, Quack, we're sharing a bed," and I'm like, "All right, here we go," and it was just stuff like that. We would just like crack up at night, man. We would take turns. It's like, okay, who gets the single bed tonight? Okay, who gets the sofa bed tonight?
Yeah.
And it was a team effort. Okay, we're all loading in, we're all loading out. There was no kind of hierarchy or anything like that. And that's Steven with his fans too, because he's so there's such a part of it as well. You know what I mean? It's just this big giant family that extends into everybody, where there's no barrier between him and the audience, and I think that's what makes him so endearing to people.
Yeah. And I mean, I love that aspect that there's like room to do things and have like fun experiences like that out on the road with him. Like with Carbon Leaf, there's really no time to do anything. We
No,
play,
no.
we're on the road and we don't have a bus driver, so it's like after gigs, it's late nights, it's it's kind of like a bandwagon sort of
Yeah,
vehicle,
yeah.
which is awesome. It's like it's your own space, it's great, it's comfortable, but you don't have any days off. You're going and you're going, and I think we did like 29 shows in 30 days the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
the last couple of fall tours that we did. So there's no time to like really experience the cities, go to see baseball games, go and do, fun stuff like that with the crew. So like there's one night and it's always on our drive from, I think it's like Austin to Phoenix or something like that. And we stop we stop in Tucson usually the night before we play in Phoenix. So that night we always stop at the same like Walmart parking lot and stay there because there's a Dave and Buster's. We go to the Dave and Buster's. We always go to
Yep.
that spot. We always sit down at the same table and play a bunch of games and then get back in the bus, go to sleep, and then go to Phoenix the next night. And then that's our only day off. So we make sure that we actually have some like, family fun time and have a sit down dinner and stuff like that. But that's one thing about Steven. Like, we always did those things are super important to him, and like having a fun experience on the road is like, and doing things is cool. So
It's funny. I just last week I was helping out a band called Deep Sea Diver, and they were opening for Pearl Jam, who's their crew are family. But one of their main guys, who's kind of been with them since day one, said at one point to me about 10 years ago, he's like, "Hey, at some point while you're away, since you're away from your family and all that, like you got to do some stuff to not like so much treat yourself, but don't skimp out on yourself, and where you're just like, this is all I do, and it's like,
right.
you know I used to just focus on the show at hand, but now it's like, you got to do things like, my buddy Troy, who tours with us with Brandy, like, and our production manager, or a couple of us, like, hey, let's go get a nice dinner tonight, let's spend some money, let's go to a steakhouse, let's not be afraid. My wife gets a little upset. She's like, why did you go to Ruth Chris? And I was like, listen, you know you're deserving of it.
Work hard, play hard,
But all, and I was on the opposite end of the spectrum, like where you said you did 29 shows in 20, in 30 days. We did day on, day off all summer. So it was
Okay.
because we were doing stadiums. So
Yep.
this production needed a whole day to get built. But since we were the direct support act, we didn't come in until like 10 a.m. day of show. And the jumps weren't that big. So it's like we finish a show, get on the bus, drive, wake up, there's your key, and all of a sudden you have this day off wherever you're going to play the next day. It was like, okay,
Wow.
we played Philly, next
Did
day you got a
nothing
day
but
off in
time.
Cincinnati. Nothing but time. And that's where it kind of becomes the other problem, is like, like you wake up with the best intentions to like, okay, I'm in Cincinnati, I want to go to, King's Dominion or whatever, and you
Mm-hmm.
just wind up like, all right, by the time you look at your watch, you're like, all right, it's 11. I should probably get in the shower, or at least use the coffee maker in the room. I used to be better about it when I was a little bit younger, trying to get the most out of it. Like, I've definitely had some great tours over the years where I got to experience, and I'm really happy what I did. Like, we did Eric Clapton's world tour in 2003, 2004, and in we started in Europe, and we were in Europe
Wow.
for a good 3 or 4 months. But the way that tour was kind of the same thing. I think it was either like day on, day off, or like day on every 2 days off. So it was like, you'd have a day off in Utrecht, Holland, and it was like just walk around. And, that was the big part for me. Like, oh, let's walk around Zurich and, you know, get to experience that. I mean, I just definitely remember being in like Copenhagen, and like,
What a beautiful city.
oh, incredible. But like
Genevieve
back
and
to
I
what,
went there for a trip for a few days, like when we're going to Ireland. So we made it a point like, oh, we're gonna go somewhere every time she goes home, and and all
Yeah.
that. And Copenhagen was one of those. I loved that city. I really loved it there.
Incredible.
It's
Incredible.
beautiful, beautiful.
But
Anyway, sorry
the
to
amusement,
derail you.
no, 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 no. I mean, it's one of those places like you find places like you never think in your life when you're, you know, a kid in elementary school, like even my son's age, and he's 9 now, you don't ever think when you're sitting in class and you're studying history or social studies, like you'll ever go to these places.
Right, right.
Especially where I'm from. I'm from upstate New York. You know, when people went on vacation, there are two big vacations in life where like you went to Florida or Vegas when you were a little bit older. To find somebody and say, hey man, my mom went to Paris, they're like, really? You know, your
Hmm.
parents have a passport? Like Ireland was different for us because that was Ireland, right? We never
Yeah,
thought of it as like some kind of big, that's where grandpa's from, and
yeah, yeah.
that's where we all, but yeah, I mean, but even like, the day off in Copenhagen, it was like back to like the amusement park thing. Like I found Tivoli, which is one of the oldest amusement parks in the world.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I'm gonna go, and you start experiencing food. I mean, when I first started traveling, I was definitely super shy about things. One of my first big
Okay.
trips kind of overseas was like I went to Thailand twice. I think I
Oh,
was
really?
19 and 21. And when I went, I mean, I went for like 4 or 5 months the first time, and then I went for 9 months the second time. And it was on a television film crew, just kind of doing audio. In the winter, the sound company I work for would farm us out to the local PBS station. And they asked one day, they're like, "Hey man, you want to go hold the boom mic in Asia?" And I was like, this is my shot. But I mean, I remember going, and it was like, the food is amazing. But the first time I went, the only thing I ate was Oreos and Pepsi Cola. So I was sick the whole time I was there. Meanwhile, this incredible, and here's the worst part, Jess. I was traveling with a chef. We were filming a cooking show,
What show was
right?
it?
This guy named Tommy Tang, he was a big chef. He's kind of the godfather of Thai food in the United States. And, it
Interesting.
was, yeah, it's like it's funny. I'm kind of mentoring a couple of people right now, and I kind of tell them all the same thing. Just say yes to everything. Just say
Yeah, for
yes.
sure. For sure.
You
That's a
know,
big thing.
it might be a bad situation to be in. You might, all right, this, like I did summer stock one summer, and it was awful. It
Mm.
was. Parts of it were fun. There are parts I remember fondly, but it's also the summer I figured out what you could and can't get away with doing this stuff. Like, how far can you push things? But it was a lot of work, and they took advantage of us for the money they paid us and all that. But it's an experience that helped you grow. You
Hmm.
know, I've taken tours that I just was like, this is not, and it helps you get to the ones where you're like, you love it. We get crew people on Brandi sometimes who come from the biggest tours in the world, and they're like, well, this band flies us this way and all that, and you're like, to
Right.
me it's still great. I mean, when I went from Robert Randolph to OAR, it was like a whole different world because it was like the way they were working. They'd work 4 days a week, we'd have 3 days off. They'd work 4 days a week, we'd have 3 days off, and I was just the happiest guy in the world. But meanwhile, some of the crew people who had been there were just like, oh man, they're beating us up, they're beating us up. I'm like, they're beating us up? Really? Have you ever done 23 shows in a row?
Have you ever been beat
No.
up?
Yeah. But then again, you talk to some of your friends who are with these big bands, and they're like, "Hey, man, they're trying to kill us this year." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
really? What's up, man? They're killing." He's like, "They got us doing 31 shows," and I'm like, "31 shows in 365 days, and you're complaining about it?
Yeah. It's not too
You know what
bad.
it's like? Yeah, it's like I did the Warp Tour. It's like 36 shows in 40 days or whatever, and your load-ins at 5 a.m. every day. And no,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
I don't think I've never really, because I didn't start touring until later on. I
Yeah,
was all done with college and stuff. Before, like with Kellogg, that was like the first. That's not true. So like with my old band in Boston, Love in Stockholm, it was more down and dirty. Like we toured, got out to the Midwest. We never did the West Coast or anything like that. But like, I didn't start until later on. So I never really
yeah,
had that experience of doing stuff like that. I had joined a more established act or something like that, and had and kind of started at that level. rather than
Hmm.
doing those early, those really like crazy things. Like Love in Stockholm for
Oh,
me was a little bit of that. Like like camped out in people's backyards after gigs and stuff, stuff like that.
floors, floors
Floors,
of people's
couches.
basement. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
definitely done that. And looking back on it, like you get home or you get like sentimental about it. And you're like, man, that was a
Uh-huh.
good time.
Yeah.
I had a great time doing that, man. Could I do it now at 47, 48 years old? Yeah, it'd be a little bit tougher.
Right.
I give my wife a
It's
hard time.
very much a that was so fun. Let's let's look back on it fondly and let's move forward. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, let's go. Just go.
Yeah.
Just go. But no, every once in a while it's it was like that Steven thing. I mean, at that point I
Uh-huh.
was, Brandi Carlisle, we flew everywhere, hotel rooms, buses, semi trucks, the whole thing. But I had so much fun.
I know.
Great. Trailer in a van, let's all take turns driving kind of thing.
So
And that
the
that
first
that
the first
camaraderie is
show
awesome.
is the first show that it wasn't Portland that was the first show, was it?
My first show was Portland.
So did you mix the Denver show, right?
That's a funny one as well. Yeah, the pizza place with the gig in the back. We did 2 nights there.
Yes. That we did 2 nights there?
Yeah, we did 2 nights.
Oh, I don't remember doing 2 nights. Anyway, but like the I remember particularly that show because like you and I feel like talked a bunch that show, and I was like, it was very much like, is this like difficult coming from Brandi Carlisle, like that thing, coming and doing this, like is it different, like, and I just remember thinking that it's like, oh, Brandi Carlisle sound guy is gonna come and rough it with
Hmm.
us. That's gonna be cool. But then obviously it's like, oh, it's just a fun another experience. It's not.
Yeah,
I mean, it's different, but it's not so different because it's just people.
can I walk in with what's here
Yeah.
and do it?
Right. Right.
Can I? Because you get comfortable, man. It's like I have the same exact equipment everywhere I go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have somebody, helps and all this. And like even some of these shows, I have a systems engineer where it's literally I walk out and mix the show, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was with you guys, I was still production managing also, Brandi, as well as the front of house engineer. Now I'm solely the front of house engineer when we tour. But I mean, I'm still very hands-on. I want to set my stuff up. I want to go up and make sure the mics are all in the right position. Do I want to patch the stage like I used to? Okay,
Yeah.
let's let somebody else, get some experience doing that. But it it's
Right.
like, can you still just go in and punt? Okay, what do you got? You got a Mackie mixer. It's 16 channels, 4 of them are broken. You have 3 microphones. You don't have clips. You only have 2 mic stands. How do we make this go?
Let's
Like
make this work.
and that's where you either sink or swim. You could either be the complete pain in the house prima donna sound engineer and go, well, I can't do this. You need to go find this, that, and the other thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this without this. And it's like, all right, yeah, let me, it's like that Odyssey of the Mind, DI kind of problem solving thing when you're a kid, where it's like, all right, let's do this. And, you walked into, yeah, we did 2 nights at that pizza place because I remember because, a big giant analog mixer that I hadn't seen in 20 years at that point, and it just spun
Mm.
it up. And I remember getting a lot of compliments there because either on the van ride over or the van ride, one of the early van rides, Brandy's management at the time called me when we were driving and said, hey, Kayamo cruise is coming up. While you're on the cruise with Brandy, do you want to mix and look after Gregory Alan Isaacoff? And I was like,
Mm.
yeah, sure, cool. I didn't know him. I'd seen him play a few times. I thought he was really cool.
Right. And then
And
he was there.
we get back in the room and he's going on and about the sound. And Steven, And walks in, he goes, he's like, oh man, it sounded so good in here, and blah blah blah. And he goes, oh, this is Quack. He did front of house tonight. And he goes, hey man, I'm Gregory Alan Isaacoff. And I said, and I'm doing sound for you on Kayamo. And he's like, oh my god. And that was, and we kind of became buddies on that because he's a complete gear nerd like I am. So, but
which is interesting to me. It's interesting
yeah,
to me that Gregory is a gear nerd, because you would never
yeah,
think that, because he has this, very organic vibe as far as his persona is and his records and stuff like that. So
yeah,
you would never know, because I don't really know. I only know him from like the 2 times that I met him in Denver playing with Kellogg.
yeah, yeah.
And that's right. I mean, I'm a huge Gregory Alan Isaacoff fan.
It's so incredible and interesting.
His song Amsterdam,
and even
was me and my wife's wedding song.
wow,
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
yeah,
That's incredible.
Super rad. I love him. It's great.
But yeah, I just remember. Yeah, we wound up. I am like one of those people that can remember, like, oh yeah, the door for the backstage is here. But yeah, we wound up doing 2 nights.
Is unbelievable. It's so good.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny though, because every time like we get new crew people and they're always like, everybody, and I'm like, yeah, I've been doing it for 30 years, And
Yeah.
he goes, and you remember like, oh yeah, they have this here and that there, and it's like, down to like nerdy stuff, like, hey man.
Yeah.
What happened to those amplifiers? They're like, oh, we upgraded, and you're like, oh, okay, just like that kind of thing. It's
Right.
it's bad,
Yeah,
but
that's good. Dude, I have to. I hate to. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I have to run. I have to get going.
yeah. We should do one of these. I want to do one of these once. I keep telling everybody, let's just talk about music and influences and what we love and stuff like that.
Yeah, let's set it up for like soon. Let's get so we can kind of piggyback off of this. That'd be fun, because I very rarely get to talk about music and influences with people, and because it's mostly about the other person's music and what they're up to and things along those lines. But I mean, I've been listening back to a lot of older stuff that kind of like, I was brought up on, and just discovering new little bits and pieces that are like, oh, these little details and these little things that are like very interesting, and they're kind of like working their way into my playing and my interests of playing live and stuff like that. So I'd love to do this again soon and talk about it.
I'm kind of the same way. I've been buying all of my favorite records again on vinyl, because now they're all super reproduced and all that. I just sit down here like a nerd, listen to records, and just like you said, you hear details and you're like, oh man, how did
all
they
that little
get
stuff,
that sound, and
right.
that snare sound. I just need that snare sound,
Yeah, I'll text you.
Yeah.
I'll text you after this. I have somewhere to be, and then I'll shoot you a message, and then we'll set it up for. Are you on the East Coast at all coming up on tour or anything?
I'm gonna be. I think I'm going to be back end of July through the first couple of weeks of August with my family, and I'm going to go hang out up at SPAC, just because that's home. It's where I grew up. Saratoga Performing Arts Center, up in Saratoga, New York. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, you'll be
There's
here
a couple
with
of big.
You'll be here with family, so you probably won't be able to get over here.
No, I'm gonna be. I'll be. That's the whole thing. When I come back, there are a lot of friends, and the one thing about winning the Grammy, though, just I know you got to go, but like after I won it, that was my whole thing. Like I went back to Albany just to kind of like ground myself, maybe. No, not gloat, just center myself. Like I went to my mom and dad's house and literally like cleaned out all of my childhood stuff and just found literally my career. That's cool. The timeline of my career. And it was just neat to kind of go home and be like, I just got the highest honor in the music industry that you can get. Like, I don't think there's, I mean, unless it was, which my kid wants an EGOT now. And I guess like that's the only thing above this, but, he went to school the next day, goes, Dad won a Grammy, but I'm getting an EGOT. And the principal called me. She goes, out of every kid in the school, I got money. It says he does it. But,
that's awesome.
I just got awarded the highest honor in music, so I just went home and honestly just cleaned out a room for a couple of days, and it's like there's my whole career and what it's led to. You look at everything and you're like, wow, finding
So cool.
DAT tapes of shows I've mixed for the last 30 years and stuff like that.
It's like, I did get better. Good.
Yeah, not quite there yet, but I'm getting better.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you.
Hey, brother,
doing
it's
it.
so good catching up.
I know, this was great. I'm gonna send you a message in a couple hours, and then we'll set up the next one.
All right, sounds awesome, man.
All right, dude.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
And that's my conversation with the great Sean Quackenbush. Make sure you check him out anywhere Brandi Carlisle or pretty much anyone else that he's doing sound for is playing, because he's great. The After the Gig newsletter, which comes out every Sunday, sometimes on Monday if I get pretty busy. Make sure you subscribe to that. I'll put a link down below in the description. Hope you guys have a great week. Hope to see you soon.